3:10, Citizen Review Board meeting relative to the budget. And we have the program director here, Burnett Relaford. And we would like her to, we would like you to introduce all those that are here with you, and we'll get into the budget.
Good afternoon, councilors. Thank you for taking the opportunity to listen to the CRB with regard to what has transpired over the 2016-2017 year, moving into the 2018-2019 year. Here beside me, to my right, we have Peter McCarthy, and to my left, we have Clifford Ryans, two of my board members.
Anybody else in the?
No.
Nope. I thought there was somebody else here. Okay. Okay. So why don't you give us an overview of the CRB? We just got your report. Thank you for being diligent and getting those all up to date. So if you can maybe give us an overview where you are now and what you've done.
So since I was hired in June of last year, we have completed the 2016 annual report and the 2017 annual report, with a first quarter for 2018 report due at the end of May. We have been working diligently to rectify our backlog, and as of right now, we'll be looking at a case from 2016 in our upcoming board meeting on Thursday. But other than that, we only have one 2016 case, and the rest are between 2017 and 2018. Currently, we have received 24 new cases as of 2018, and we still have some remaining from 2017. In terms of totals, for 2016, we received 109 total cases. In 2017, we received 118 total cases. I know the report that you have in front of you lists that there were no reports estimated in 2017, 2018, so I'd like to report that we do have 2 reports, both of those annual reports. In terms of the Citizens Review Board, we are diligently working to advise the community of our existence still. There is a little bit of a gap in people knowing that the Citizens Review Board is still here and that we are fully functioning. So we intend to do some more community outreach to make sure that they are aware. We have tried to do a better job over the last year of getting the word back out there, being involved in the community as much as we can, just so that the community knows that they have a resource to advise of complaints that they have with regard to the police department. So the Citizens Review Board does review any complaint that's filed by the citizen with regard to the police department. It is an independent investigation of that complaint. If a person files a complaint with the Office of Professional Standards through the police department, it is sent over to our office, and vice versa. We send a copy over there to the Syracuse Police Department so they are aware of the complaint as well. We are continuously working on our relationship with the police department, and with what I mean by that is continuing to build on the relationship so that we are able to receive the information that we need in a timely manner, and to obtain information that we need in a timely manner, so that when we are doing our investigation, it can be as thorough as possible. We have been attempting to improve the concerns that the police department has with regard to the CRB, and what I mean by that is some people have been operating on the old ordinance as to when it was first established, and not realizing that we have a new ordinance. So some of the concerns that have been expressed previously, we are still clearing up with regard to what our current hearing procedures are and what our current ordinance states. So it's very important for people to know that we are a reestablished CRB from 2011, and we are not under the same CRB that was originally established. I do have copies of our current ordinance with me, just in case anybody needs them, so that we can refresh everybody's memory as to what the new CRB is about.
I'd like you to expand on that a little bit about the relationship that you have with the police department relative to the meetings you've had with the board.
Okay. So in terms of us building relationships, I have a constant conversation with the Office of Professional Standards. I have had monthly meetings with the chief. I've had monthly meetings with Counselor Thompson with regard to the needs that the CRB has with regard to information. It is not where it needs to be, but it's improving in terms of getting the information in a timely manner. When I have questions while doing my investigations, I'm able to contact the Office of Professional Standards in order to get some sort of information with regard to policies. I do have a copy of the Syracuse Police Department's policies that I use when I'm investigating, but it's also helpful when I still have questions to call on them with questions. We have yet to have an officer to answer any questions that I have during my investigation period, which is an issue. We have yet to have an officer to appear at the time of a hearing and provide testimony. We did utilize a different policy that we have based on our new ordinance in subpoenaing officers to the table, but we have yet to have them to testify. So that is something that we're still, working on. We are not afraid to use our subpoena power. We only intend to utilize it when it's absolutely necessary, if we feel that it warrants it, but it is costly to the taxpayers in terms of our budget in utilizing subpoenas to get officers to a hearing. Yes.
So also, we've been making a real effort to try to understand what the police officers go through in their job and what their challenges they face. So most of us have now done ride-alongs with the police where we spend 4 hours riding with a couple of officers. And last week, I think 6 out of the 10 of us attended for 3 nights the Citizens Police Academy, where we experienced some of the training that the police go through, and some simulated situations. So again, to give us an understanding of what their job is like to help inform our decision-making.
Also, we have been reaching out to the police department, very digitally and strong as far as trying to improve our relationship, and we really need, to improve in that area as far as getting people in the police department to come to the table.
Yes, thank you.
I just want to ask you a question because before the CRB was transformed, I'm a little curious because I did some research across the country, and I found here that we kind of just direct everything to the police department. The CRB is actually structured to address any city department, not just the police department. I'm just curious.
It is my understanding that in terms of there are complaint forms that we can provide with regard to the sheriffs. There is the Justice Center Oversight Committee who oversees issues that happen at the jail. But with regard to, so we don't technically get anything with regard to the sheriffs or the troopers, but if we do have someone who calls with regard to those things, we do point them in the right direction. We make sure we try to figure out which agency was the arresting agency, which agency, if it was an arrest, what agency was in contact, so that we know whether or not the Syracuse Police Department could have been involved in that.
I think I'm trying to, a broader question, because again, everything I researched is not just directed to the police. It's all the municipality departments. So ours is just police officers?
Yes, ours is we only have jurisdiction over the Syracuse City Police Department. So the Syracuse Police Department is our only jurisdiction. If you'd like to expand it,
We would
look
definitely
into
be
it.
open to it.
But as of right now, that is definitely our jurisdiction.
That's right in the language of the ordinance.
Yeah, actually, I have a few questions. Let me provide some context first. I've always questioned the understanding of the legislation by persons involved with the CRB, because I'm always concerned about the message that's communicated to the public, right? And the ability to provide a deliverable that's relative to the message communicated to the public. Does that make sense?
Yes.
The public in the past has had an idea that the CRB had a certain kind of power. We always talked about a lack of teeth often over the years with CRB. And what happened in the past as a result of what appeared to people to be a lack of delivery of service was they then come complain to us that I complained of that, but it didn't work. And that's usually not because it didn't work, but it's because they may have received the wrong idea about what its abilities were. So I asked, my first question is, in the efforts of outreach, what is communicated as the intent of the CRB? And this is about its effectiveness in terms of providing a deliverable.
So I make sure that I explain to the citizens and people who complain, because I do often get a misconception. I do explain to them that when you file a complaint by the CRB, it's on one road. And when you file a complaint with regard to a notice of claim, for instance, when you're suing the city, that's on another road. And your criminal matter is on another road. And that they don't usually intertwine. There are times when, you can do in-camera reviews for lawsuits and stuff, and they might look in that information, but for all intents and purposes, they're on 3 different roads. Okay, I also try to explain, because we do get some people who think that if I file a complaint with the Citizens Review Board, that is going to reduce my criminal charges. So I make sure that I explain to them that I cannot reduce your criminal charges. And what we focus on is the interaction between that citizen and the officer. And it has nothing to do with reducing any criminal charges, which is sometimes seems to be what they think. I actually had someone to tell me that if you can't reduce my criminal charges, then I don't want to go through with this process. So I do understand that misconception. So we are planning to do a outreach coming up in May to ensure that, and that's why we're diligently going to different community events to make sure that people are aware, so that we are trying to improve the relationship that we have with the community as well, to make sure that they know that we are out there and exactly what we can do.
All right, because what I'm talking about here is resolution versus no remedy, right?
Okay.
Or the appearance of no remedy.
Okay.
What some people think, is that the CRB can get officers fired. That's usually what they're looking for. They're looking for the CRB to cause a termination. And that's not, it's further from truth than it is true, right? We talked the last time you were here about thoroughly understanding the union contract to understand where the CRB could kind of fit in and be more effective. Have you had any success with that?
Well, and I would say that I have more communication with the current union president in terms of asking him certain questions that I need to be answered. We have not figured out exactly our straight avenue as to how we can fix that. I do tell people when I speak to the citizens that we are able to make recommendations with regard to discipline, and I stress the fact that we are able to make recommendations. And I try to make sure that they understand that, but we have not found the finite path as to how we can, alleviate that. We are looking, to some changes with the current, PBA contract. We are asking that there is language in the contract so that, the officers are able to come to the table and provide testimony. We're talking about, the Garrity statement that can be provided by the Syracuse Police Department and helps to allow them to come to the table and testify. So we've thrown some of those things out there, and we have yet to just make it so that it's abundantly useful and helpful to the public in terms of that, but we are working.
Okay. And I just want to clarify for all listening, while the discussion may sound about programming, these are programs we essentially fund, and so this is a question about performance and ensuring that the funding has value. My other question, you made a statement about what the CRB used to be versus to what it is now. What is the understanding of what the differences is now?
Well, in terms of, there are some differences in terms of the hearing processes and procedures. So our current hearing process and procedures does not call for us to videotape or audio tape a proceeding. So we received some pushback with regard to that. With the concern that a lawsuit could be filed and there could be evidence to be obtained. So that is no longer in place. And so the only testimony and the information that can be obtained would be through the hearing panel that is there. So there's no record in terms of that. We do issue a findings letter, and that findings letter is provided to the chief. There is a change in the findings letter when it comes out to the public, and the office of the Corporation Counsel's office does receive a copy of that. So I just want to make sure that those things are clear. I mean, in terms of what we are actually able to do, I do not believe that the previous CRB did have subpoena power, which is something that we have, because that was an issue that came up along the way with a certain case. So I do know that now we do have subpoena power. We do have subpoena power, and the 4th Department was able to explain that in our last lawsuit that we had to make everyone aware that we do have that separate.
I want to mention on that because it's my position, and I don't see Joe Barry anywhere, that I thought, with all due respect, providing the CRB subpoena power was redundant, considering that the council already possesses subpoena power. And so you have now a creature of the legislature, i.e. the CRB, with subpoena power from the body that created it that has subpoena power, right? And so you kind of got a duplication of services there where we can certainly have some cost savings. The other thing I want to ask you, though, the professional services line, the 415 line, if I'm not mistaken, that is, some of that, if not all of that, is used for legal services?
The 415 line, it is not all used for legal services. We have used it in the past, mainly for legal services. That is an issue that I'm trying to look into as well. I have approached Corporation Counsel with regard to our ability to use a private investigator and a medical examiner, which falls under those lines. So I've requested information as to why that issue came up and why it was denied previously by the prior administrator to utilize that service. So right now, it may seem as if it's only being used for outside legal counsel, but that is not our intent. Moving forward, we intend to use a private investigator in the future and a medical examiner if necessary. So although it seems like that's the only budget item that gets used, it's not the intent of it. So that's why it's important to continue to have the funds available.
I just want to mention, maybe for consideration, the council usually has money on retainer for an attorney. I don't understand why we can't, in that respect, if there's an attorney required, we use the same attorney in an effort to reduce costs. But that's just something for us to consider.
I'll make a note of that.
Thanks.
Your language says that you can use a medical examiner, or you can't?
Our language says that we have received money from the council allowing us to have funds available for a medical examiner. It is my understanding that previously, when that was attempted by the prior administrator, that there was some sort of issue with regard to that. And I'm still trying to figure out, what that issue is.
It was a forensic investigator. I remember that because I was forensic. Forensic. And I was going to ask about that because I do recall they did come and ask for a forensic investigator.
Yes.
My understanding, and Mary, you might be able to talk about this, there was problems with getting the contract. They couldn't get one that wanted to sign the contract to do contractual service with us.
Mm.
Right. So we would need new contracts for.
Yes, and that's what I've been looking, but slightly focused on our backlog and getting up to date. But I have received some information with regard to a investigator, but I need to look into that further and see.
And then what happened, Joey said that he would do the investigations. Now I'm going backwards. Joey was doing the investigations, which in turn, when we talked about the forensics, Joey continued to do the investigations. That's what happened.
Okay.
Other questions? Yes, Councilor Carney.
So I had a couple questions. Where are we at now? Because I know when you had come in, there was a pretty big backlog. And are we, at this point, pretty much caught up?
I would not say that we're caught up, but we're moving forward. There is a delay on the other end as well. I don't believe that it's proper investigation to complete one without having the necessary statements from the officer. So there is a backlog at the police department's end with regard to providing that information. Other than having a complaint and the information with regard to those witnesses, I still don't have what was the reason for the pullover. I am able to obtain 911 calls and stuff pretty frequently and soon, but there is a backlog on the other end as well.
What's the language say for response time?
I believe it's within 30 days they're supposed to complete their investigation, and our hearing or something is supposed to be around 60 days, but that is not occurring the way that it is. And I have had conversations with both the chief and also with the Office of Professional Standards to remedy that situation. I let them know that they are behind. I've spoken with Councilor Thompson with regard to that, so it's a constant battle between departments in terms of, making sure that I get information timely.
So is the 30 days enough for you to do your part of it?
I would say it isn't, because it would depend on me receiving their reports, because then I would have the nature of the stop and the officer statement, and I'm not getting that within 30 days.
Is that a never? You receive it within 30 days? Or what percentage of responses do you get?
I would say that it's maybe, I would say it's really less than 30 days. I'm trying to give you a good percentage, but since I've started, I haven't really received anything within 30 days.
Pretty much never.
Yes. So.
That needs to be improved.
So in terms of outreach, what works best for you to get your message out to the community, and what are there specific ideas you would have that you think would improve outreach that you don't have the resources for, and if so, what are they?
So currently, usually when we have done the West Side Cultural Festival, anytime we have something and we see that there's a community partner that's doing something, we try to jump in. But our goal is to start hosting outreach ourselves, saying this is put on by the CRB. We have reached out to a community center on the north side that we will have a event with them coming up on May 31st. It's going to be a Know Your Rights session with regard to the teens at the Syracuse Northeast Community Center. But that's what we're looking to do, is to do more events like that, where it's solely not just us piggybacking on something that someone else is hosting and we just have a table. We're starting to try to do those things. And we've gone to every Syracuse City School District safety meeting. We've gone to every one of those to hand out packets and provide information. And our members have been doing some of the legwork as well in outreach, but we intend to start having things that says, this is put on by the Syracuse, the Citizens Review Board for the City of Syracuse, so.
Councilor Allen.
Yes, Councilor Green actually said what I was going to say, but what line item does your community outreach fall under?
So in terms of, it would fall under our travel, training, and development, I believe, but I'm still working on figuring out where exactly, because there are certain we would really have to rely on places that would not charge us a fee to do these. So we would have to really work on to try to figure out where we can have them. If it's gonna be just in a park and we're just paying for advertising. We do spend a lot of money on office supplies to print material so that when we go to these events, we have them. I would say that Councilor Thompson, our prior board member, Diane Turner, will be reaching out to you because we are looking to have our annual training day coming up, and I know you had some previous conversations with regard to that. Maybe, Mary, can you?
It's in your operating supplies.
Okay.
Approaching 10,175.
Okay, so yes, and that area is where we are using those supplies to look at the printing costs and things of that nature, but we will be looking to do them at like the Syracuse Community Connections and different places in terms of all the quadrants of the city that we need to be doing outreach. We intend to reach that goal.
Councilor Driscoll.
If I could just ask an obvious and redundant question, what are your thoughts to, it seems that you're not getting a lot of compliance, officers, requiring subpoena. Do you have any thoughts about how to, you're obviously thinking about how to improve that situation. Are there any suggestions that we at the council could help with, or any?
Only one way to do that.
We are looking to put it in the contract. We have asked the current mayor to assist us with that and to get it in the contract so that they come to the table, they testify. Again, we've tried to utilize the Garrity statement that could either be provided by the officer or by the chief of police to give them some sort of protection, with them coming to the table. But it's important. It's important to the community for them to come to the table. It's important to the CRB for them to come to the table. It doesn't provide everybody with a full picture as to what's going on. If you keep telling us that we're only making a decision one-sided based on one person's information, you can't keep saying that if you're not coming to the table. So, I've heard that statement, throughout the time that I've been here, and, yes, we have your report, but we still have questions. I still have questions, and I've been, I've requested to speak to the officer and been denied. I've requested for them to answer my questions in an email, and I've been denied. Then we have a hearing. I send a letter inviting them to a hearing, and I don't even get a response. I've received one phone call since I've been here that says, oh, I have something else going on and I can't attend this hearing. But other than that, I won't even get a response. It's kind of rude not to provide a response that says I'm not available, but that's where we are right now.
Thank you.
If I could just restate, what I mentioned before, and this is to the benefit of the new councilors, not suggesting that it's not known, but the PBA contract is between the union and the chief. That's what the issue is, and the chief is the only one that they have to respond to according to the contract. And that's why it's very important to understand, maybe if by reading the contract you can find spaces where an agreement could be made, and by that get them to respond. But for as long as the contract is not understood, you'll continue to be stonewalled because they do not have to respond according to their agreement.
And that's why we were trying to focus on, in a recent situation, and getting the Garrity statement from the chief with the union president. We were working together to try to do that, and the officers came under subpoena, but.
And they do it to the courts. They do it to the courts. They go before the judges, and they'll get up there, but you can't compel them to open their mouths. They do it to the courts.
Something has to change about that right there, though.
It's not local.
There's a related issue that we think is important, that there's a misconception, and I have no idea how many officers believe this or how many members of the public, but there's a misconception which may have been more true with the old CRB you asked about, I don't know. But we've heard it stated more than once from different people. The CRB just tries to find the cops guilty every time. And I had a conversation last week in our training with a couple of the officers, and I pointed out to them that the CRB actually goes through a two-stage process where the whole board reviews every complaint after Renette's done an initial investigation and decide whether that will go to a hearing. Most of them don't. Most of the complaints never make it to the hearing. And of the ones that do, some are founded, some are not. Overall, the rate at which we determine are founded are under 15% over the last 3 years. And that's on the website in the annual reports. So that means over 8 out of 10 of every complaint we get, we say the police were right. They don't know this. The lieutenant said to me last week, we had no idea. All we see is the ones that come back that are the founded complaints. Nobody tells us that you're making, choices where you find that the officers were right. And I think that's a misconception that probably leads to the officers' reluctance to show up for hearings.
But do you
They
guys
have-
share that information with the officers?
We do.
We have, that's in terms of building the communication with the departments. And I wouldn't say that we believe that the officers are right. I just believe that given the fact of the circumstances that are presented in the complaint, it may lead toward a procedural factor that the complainant was unaware of, or a belief as to why they felt the officer acted in a way. So we're able to look at that scenario and look at it in the context of the complaint. So part of my reason for having all these conversations with the Syracuse Police Department and different parties is to clear up this misconception, is to say, would you like us to send you copies of, which officers in your area receive no hearing letters? Would you like us to provide you with, the names of officers in which that the case went to a hearing and it was unfounded? Would you like that information? Because it was our understanding that the information was being shared. When we provide a letter, it's directed to the officer. A officer at the desk is provided with the letter, and I see him putting it in a file cabinet, him or her putting it in a file cabinet. So I just, it is only a perception that it is being delivered and that they are aware. Not every letter, I try to announce when I go there, I actually say, hey, these are some, in all intents and purposes, your good letters are coming today. Just to kind of say, hey, don't, this shouldn't go in the circular bin so fast, just in case that's where it kind of ends up.
I mean, it takes a long time to kind of undo, rumors and ideas. But, there's two things, and it's just as from my perspective and or understanding, that the CRB's intent is, one, obviously to provide remedy to citizens in the event that there was some out-of-bounds behavior that the chief would then determine the appropriate discipline for, right? But it's also to prevent future liability, to suggest policies for policy adjustments that would ultimately reduce penalties coming to the city. That part is often ignored and forgotten.
Correct. We issue them every year, and we have been issuing them at the end of our annual report every year. I do not believe from the time that I'm sitting here that they have been considered by the police department, but we do recommend them every year. I believe they've been recommended since 2012 as certain policies and procedures that may assist the citizens more and the police more. As I've said all the time, that I believe that if the citizens know that the CRB is an effective remedy to voice their concerns, it's a win for the community. It's also a win for the police department in a sense that it helps build community relations with the police department, because they know that the CRB is going to take this information, is going to make a recommendation. So we should think twice about having ill behavior on the street. I mean, it's going to be what both departments allow it to be in terms of how much the police department's going to participate in the process. It's hard to tell somebody that that the police are not, not coming to a hearing because they because they know that they did something wrong, opposed to, oh, they couldn't come because the PBA told them not to. I mean, it's gonna stop, at some point in time, the belief is going out the window, and they're just gonna say, well, the officers are wrong because they didn't come to a hearing, and it's not gonna matter how many times
But can I ask you a
we
question?
keep pushing the factor, it's gonna still seem that way.
So shouldn't that be part of the education? Because I think it's very unfair.
Absolutely.
Because the PBA has a big part of this, okay? And I heard you, Cliff, when you said we need to change that, not so easy and not so simple.
Right.
Because one, we're dealing with the state of New York, and we're dealing with union contractual agreements.
I understand.
So we need to start talking about that too, because that's a big part of why things stall.
Here's
the
what I
PBA.
suggested, that we be allowed to do a presentation for the police department so that we could change that misconception of
Good luck.
what we're trying to do. I know, you saying good luck, and see, that's a part of the problem. You see what I'm saying? We have to understand that we have to find common ground, bottom line. I would love to do a presentation for the police department so that we can clear up any misconceptions that they may have as far as the Citizen Review Board is concerned. She is doing an awesome job, and we are trying hard. We are doing everything in our power to try to let them know this is not a witch hunt, but we want that misconduct.
This is why the initial question about intent and the expression of the intent of the CRB was important, right? Because as you said, at some point when deliverables aren't provided, value disappears.
Correct.
We'll be right back here to asking, why do we fund you, right? So, in order to qualify the value, we have to find a way, to Cliff's point, to find a middle ground. Even with a presentation, you gotta arm yourself with intelligence.
Absolutely.
You gotta understand
Of course.
what prevents you
Of course,
from engaging them.
of course.
And if you don't read that contract and understand it, then you're kind of going in there at a serious disadvantage.
Within that contract, anything that would stand in the way of bettering a relationship between the community and the police department
That's not
should
how
be
it's-
addressed.
Well, that's not how it's going to be worded.
Absolutely.
I know that's not how it's gonna be worded. I know what you're saying to me.
Right.
I understand that.
Right.
What I'm saying to you, I'm getting straight to the point with it.
Yeah.
Which is,
So
You know.
let me get a couple other things in here, if other counselors have questions. Renat, can you tell us where we stand now with CRB appointments? We've tried to get these up to date. What vacancies do we have?
We still continue to have Chad Ryan's district appointment to be fairly outstanding for a few months now. I mean, I
Off
have.
my last appointment, what do you want me to do?
We're not going to
Had one
discuss
quit
that
and
in the
one
open
get
forum
thrown
here, but
There's one from the second district.
need them.
we did receive a at-large. We did see that Grinolds was appointed. I have not received contact from him as of yet. Maybe he isn't aware. I don't know if he's been sworn in yet, so I will double check with regard to that. As our
You spoke
CR
with him before that.
I spoke with him before that. Our CRB meeting is going to be held on the 12th. I don't know if he's going to show up at that point in time, but it's the 12th here in the Common Council chambers at 5:30. Please come out and attend. But yes,
So what is left? The second?
so just Chad Ryan's district.
Okay.
That's it. Counselor Ryan. Counselor Ryan.
That's one of them. And secondly, the last, one of the last times that we spoke with the chief, relative to, having somebody at the meetings. Have you?
Yes,
You're gonna be there for the 12th?
I spoke with the chief actually today, and he did advise me that one of the officers, because we did have a meeting with the police liaison committee, which was a helpful discussion. And that was when we were able to gain some understanding as to their beliefs and things of that nature. So I believe that was a productive meeting rather. He did advise me that he is getting ready to have Mark Russin be available to the Citizens Review Board, which I think is an advantage to everyone. So we're looking forward to that, and I will double check and see if he's going to make it to the meeting on the 12th.
Yeah, which is important, because one of the complaints or concerns that the CRB has had is when they review a report, and they have two incidents sort of similar, how come one officer did one thing and one officer did another, that they would have somebody from the liaison board here to explain to them those circumstances and why the difference occurs, what one can and cannot do. Other questions, one? Well, I thank you so much for
Thank
all of you coming today, and
Thank
for
you.
all
I
the
have copies of the ordinance for
information.
someone who has them.
Pass that out, and we thank you.
Thank you so much.
Mayor's office is up at
4 o'clock. Okay. I ain't moving.
4 o'clock?